Hello and welcome back. It's October. October snuck up on me a little bit. I feel like I said that last month. I don't know how repetitive these introductions get because I can't really remember exactly what I said in all of my previous videos. But October did sneak up on me, so depending on how quickly I can get this video edited, it might not go out until October has already started. The good news about that is lately I've been having my bullet journal themes a little bit more loose. In fact, most months lately I don't have a theme, I just have a kind of vague color scheme. All that to say, you can probably watch this video at any time of year and still get something out of it. The first thing I'm going to do, as usual, is open up my yearly notebook and have a look at my happiness project, which has not aged super well. I've talked about this a little bit in previous videos, but it's really hard to plan out an entire year in advance. And I think some of these months I was a little bit too specific on. As far as September went, it was kind of a mixed bag. I made progress in some areas and did not make much progress in others. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that the third week of September was really rough for me. Nothing terrible happened, I just had a lot of things kind of stack up. So a lot of the progress on my goals are not quite where I wanted them. My first goal was to meditate for 30 minutes every day, and almost immediately I realized that 30 minutes is way too long, and I dropped that down to about 15. My next goal was to complete a home improvement project, and this one was kind of a freebie because we did have to stain the new fence that we built, and it was quite a bit of work, so that was another reason that I didn't kind of achieve as much as I wanted to this month because it was physically exhausting, and all the other yard work I did as well just kind of left me very tired. I did not close any open projects. Looking back, that was kind of a weird goal to set. I kind of get the idea behind it to clear up things that are on my mind, but I just couldn't find anything that really fit, that was close to being done, that I could just finish up. So that's staying blank. Ultimately, I was right in my journaling at the beginning. Without a place in my routine for meditation, I often just skipped it, so I did very little of that. And it is really something that I think is important, so it's going to be a habit for next month as well. And I'm just going to put a little bit more thought into when I'm going to do it. I'm not going to try and do 30 minutes right off the bat because I do think that made me shy away from it a little bit. Because it really is, half an hour is a lot of time. It doesn't sound like it when you just put down 30 minutes on a paper, but go ahead and try sitting quietly in one place for 30 minutes and it feels quite a bit longer. I also wanted to check in on my goals and kind of reevaluate what I want to do. I did do this, but I didn't really have the time to put my thoughts into words and write them down here, so I'm gonna do that later, kind of on my own time when I have a quiet moment. And October's happiness project spread is all kind of filled out and set up with the idea that I'm going to be doing Inktober. And I thought really hard about this because I have a long legacy of taking on too much work, specifically artistic work, that I want to have time for, but I just don't. And I knew if I stuck to this plan how it's written now, I would overdo it and I wouldn't get anything else done. So my compromise, and looking back, it really probably isn't as much of a compromise as I needed. My compromise is to do 20 pieces of art for Inktober, and I'm not going to use actual ink. I'm still finalizing my decision. It's September 30th when I'm doing this editing, so I do still have time to decide, but I'm thinking either watercolor paintings or just straight up digital art for the sake of ease. I haven't decided yet. I'm leaning towards watercolor because I think it'll be a little bit more interesting. I would like to film these pieces and put them up for you on YouTube, No guarantees on that one, but it's what I'm thinking about now. But I'm not going to really alter the spread. I'm just going to do the 20 pieces and kind of fill them in as I do them. So there'll be a lot of empty lines in the spread, and that's going to be okay. Now, moving into my monthly bullet journal, which surprisingly has enough room in it for another month. I can't believe that I've made one kind of small notebook last for 10 months out of the year. Anyway, here's my September monthly spread with my goals on the left and my habits on the right. Like I said, I really got derailed in September. I did a lot of both physically and mentally exhausting things, and I found myself just kind of resting all night, every night, and playing a lot of video games. Another thing that didn't quite go to plan, but that is totally fine, is that my Skillshare course I'm working on, it's going to be a sequel to the first one, and the first one was about making a website with the Django web framework, and the second one is going to build on that first one, and it's all about adding user authentication and changing the website so that users can interact with it in different ways that are kind of specific to them. And all of this functionality is stuff I've done before, but I really needed to clarify a lot of the details and kind of refresh my memory on how it all is done. I needed to do a lot of research, and I didn't really take that into account when I was planning the month of September. Both of my coding projects, my app I'm making, and the game development work, I really didn't do much on them. I don't like that happened, but the next thing I'm getting to is that my writing work has been going really well also. So my Skillshare work and my writing work were both kind of the highlights of this month. And then my yard work goals, which were actually lowest priority, I realized as the weather started changing that if I didn't get the yard work done before we hit the rainy season, it would be a lot harder to do. So kind of in my mind, I prioritized that much higher, and I actually did quite a bit of yard work. Moving on to habits, I already talked a lot about meditation. My steps goal was quite a challenge. Having it set that high, I think, motivated me to go on more walks. And when I say go on more walks, I really just mean walking around my living room, listening to audiobooks and podcasts, which for me is pretty good. Like I said, it's been getting kind of rainy and cold, and so going outside just isn't really my thing. I also have this spending goal for September. I tried to make something like this work, but in the end I realized I'm already budgeting pretty strictly. I use Mint for budgeting, and sometimes things just come up. It's not always my decision if I want to spend more money on food, for example. I mean, I could get real strict about it. That's a lot of mental work, but what I've decided is I'm just gonna keep using Mint and budgeting as best I can and trying to make those good decisions without a separate tracker in my bullet journal. My Instagram habit did not go as well as I wanted to believe as it would. I think really what I need is just a little nudge earlier in the day to remind me to post. And this last little tracker at the bottom here was my cleaning tracker. Flipping very quickly through the weeklies and dailies of September, I've noticed that my bullet journaling habit has been getting a lot better. This first week in particular was very good. I was checking in with my journal pretty much every day. I had some fun with some colorful ink, and I kind of structured out my week and thought about my goals, and it just went really well. The second week was another good but also very busy week. This was the week that we stained the fence, which was physically very exhausting, so after we did that, I was just kind of done doing things. Next was my kind of bad week. Like I said, nothing really serious happened. It was just a lot of little things, and I just couldn't deal with anything on top of that. The good thing is that over the weekend, I managed to rest up pretty good, so it didn't really carry over into the next week. I know sometimes you have weeks that are so bad that you need a whole week just to recover from them. This wasn't like that. It was just kind of a blip on the radar. And then this last week is going great. I've had a lot of fun with color on this page too. Getting into some nice red colors in my fountain pens. I don't have a lot of red, but the few that I do are very warm and kind of nice to write with. This week, I felt like I had plenty of time to revisit my bullet journal and write things down and make lists and all the things that I like to do that sometimes I feel a little bit rushed. But this week, nothing's rushed. I'm checking in consistently and I'm getting some things done. Now, time for the main event, setting up for October. This month, I wanted to use some watercolor. I just really wanted a lot of color, a lot of decoration. So what I did was section off the page, so I had a nice big block of color on the left, and then on the right page I sectioned off so that the color would go on the right. And I used tape, just some cheap little washi tape, so that I could get some nice straight lines. And from the beginning, I knew I wanted to put numbers down the colorful side, and so I didn't want this design to be too crazy. I got out my Winsor & Newton watercolors, and I just started painting these long, skinny, kind of organic shapes up and down the page. It kind of looks like fire, or it might look like a bunch of really crunchy leaves. Using kind of purples, reds, oranges, and yellows. It's all like kind of warm fall colors. And one thing to watch out for, I'm doing this on Tomoe River paper, which is really good for fountain pens. It's not really designed for watercolor, but it seems to work okay. The only thing is, because it is very, very thin paper, you can't really do any layers on this or it will wear through the paper a little bit. So that's one thing to watch out for. I did pretty much just one layer, and then in a couple places I went over it with a second layer where I thought it needed to be more vibrant. And once I had my block of color filled in, I went over it with, you guessed it, metallic watercolors, because I love them and I can't get enough of the shimmer. And what I did with these was go over the lines with a similar color of metallic watercolor. And I don't know how this fits into the fire or the leaves, but I thought this made a really cool effect, just kind of outlining these shapes with very shimmery, concentrated watercolor. In a way, it almost looks like a geode or something. Whatever it is, I really, really like how it turned out. Now, to set up the content for these pages, on the left side, I'm going to have my goals, and on the right side, I'm going to have habits. So, left side first, I'm going to have 5 goals, just like last month. It's going to look really similar to September, but I am going to change my goals around a little bit, and I'm also going to add these progress bars. I've done some form of progress bars many times in past bullet journal videos. I just really like to fill things in, and when you have just a checkbox, you get to fill it in once when you finish this big goal. When you have a progress bar, the way I do it, I don't actually calculate like 0% to 100%. I just fill in a box whenever I work on that goal. And then if I finish it, I just fill it up the rest of the way. I think one time I had a situation where I filled it up way before the goal was ever finished, and really that just tells me that goal was way too big. This method works pretty well most of the time, so I'm going with it. And when I'm filling in these progress bars, I'm going to take it up a notch and actually color code the weeks. So I have a little box at the top labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna color code each week, and then depending on what color is filling up each progress bar, I'll know if I worked on that goal kind of evenly throughout the month, if I did it all at the beginning of the month, things like that. And my goals for October, I've hinted at them a little bit, are going to be number 1, complete a novel outline for NaNoWriMo or National Novel Writing Month. I have another page that I'm going to set up in a minute that is going to help me with this goal that I'll talk about when we get there. 2, my Skillshare course is posted or published. It's finished. It's done. 3rd goal, 20 art pieces for Inktober. That one's pretty straightforward. 4th, 10 hours total on my mobile app I'm working on. And then finally 5, 10 hours total on game development. So those numbers are way lower than they were last month, but they're still kind of substantial. I'm slowly coming to terms with the amount of free time that I actually have in the evenings. I'm just like perpetually, chronically optimistic. I think I have a lot more time than I do, and slowly, month by month, I'm gonna get a little bit closer to reality. So those are my goals. Moving on to the right side of the page, this one is super simple. It's just a habit tracker, the ordinary 1 to 31. Each column is a separate habit. And when I was picking what I wanted my habits to be this month, I really focused on what I thought would improve my overall health the quickest. And a big thing is nutrition. For me, eating habits just go way down the tubes in the wintertime because of all the holidays and because of pumpkin spice lattes, and well, that's pretty much it. But pumpkin spice lattes are my weakness, and I need to put boundaries in place so that I don't just kill myself with sugar and caffeine. So these habits very quickly are at least 100 grams of protein, less than 50 grams of sugar, walking at least 9,000 steps, so that one's up a little bit to kind of increase the challenge, meditate 15 minutes, and then I also have one for skincare in the morning and skincare in the evening. And those are all daily habits. I don't expect I'll get all of them every day, but the goal is to try. Now we're at the spread I mentioned earlier that's gonna kind of guide me towards completing my writing goals of having a complete outline before National Novel Writing Month. And if you're in the writer community at all, you may have heard of Preptober, which is just a fun little hashtag for the act of prepping in October for National Novel Writing Month, which is in November. So the idea is that you do all your prep work for your story, and then you're ready to just hit the ground running and start writing on November 1st. I've been participating in NaNoWriMo for years, and often what I will do, even when I try really hard to get a head start, is I will not start planning my story until it's very, very close to November, and then I will get a really slow start because I'm scrambling to figure out what my story is even about. There are some magical people on this earth who can just sit down and write a story and go and get all the way to the end. I can't do that. I need a plan, or I don't know what to do or where to go. So what I did was make a list of prompts. I kind of did this in the format of like an Instagram challenge, where each day I have a prompt, and the idea is that I will use that prompt to work on my outline, to flesh out my story, and kind of figure out what I'm going to be writing in November. And I actually have posted this on Instagram already before this video is up, and you're totally welcome to use this, use these prompts, take them, fill them out. I would love it if you'd tag me in it, but this isn't any kind of like official campaign. I made these mostly for me. I actually did set them up in kind of an interesting way. Now, I'm not going to read all of these off because there's a lot of them and some of them are kind of long, but you'll see as I'm filling them in, I put 2 horizontal lines at number 10 and number 27. And I tried to divide up the month in terms of percentages. So at 10, about 30% of the way through October, I wanted to spend that time exploring things that are more broad, so things like setting, who the protagonists are, who or what the opposing force is. I call this the villain throughout the rest of the prompts, but really, like, a story doesn't need a specific character villain. Depending on the story, your opposing force can be something more subtle, like a feeling of despair or an act of nature. You get my point. But throughout the story, this opposing force should be doing things, and that's what I tried to hit on throughout the rest of the prompts when I use the word villain. So the first 10 prompts are kind of overall background context information, and then 11 through 27, I'm not following a specific outlining guide, but I tried to hit on common pieces of, like, if you look up like how to outline a novel, a lot of these pieces will be there in pretty much all of them. And some of the questions are more about why your character is doing things, rather than just what the plot is expecting them to do. So I have things like incite the character to action, leaving the comfort zone, what stands in their way, the dark night of the soul, which is a really kind of vivid imagery for a point in the story where the protagonist is at a very low point. So all of these are kind of my interpretation of the pieces of a story. You can fill them out and fit them together however you want, of course. And then the final 4 days, I set aside to kind of go over the outline as a whole. So we have things like summarize the main points to make sure you didn't miss anything, break those points into scenes. What I like to do is go through each scene and remind myself why that scene is there. Like, what do I want out of this scene? What does the character want? What's the mood? I find having notes like this really helps, especially when fast drafting, which is typically how NaNoWriMo plays out. You're writing very quickly and you often don't have time to go back and think about like character motivations and things like that. So having little reminders like this, one, helps me find unnecessary scenes or scenes that are not propelling the story forward or adding any kind of color to the story. And it also makes it so I can just write really fast. So that's my Preptober prompt list. Feel free to use it if you want. I'm going to be using it, though I don't know how much of that process I'm going to be posting on Instagram. I might do like a little vloggy thing. I'm not sure. I have not had the best success with doing vlogs, but there's no time like the present to try again. Now, the final spread I'm going to be setting up for October is a very simple one. It's a gratitude spread. I've done these before. There's not much to them, just a numbered list, and then each day of the month I'll come back to my notebook and I'll write down something I'm grateful for. There are some people who put limitations on, like, say you can't do the same thing twice, so you always have to dig deeper for gratitude. I don't really like to do that. I just like to do whatever I'm feeling at that moment, because the point really is to just feel grateful, especially as we get into these cold, dark winter months. And then another reason I wanted to include this, rather than it's just a good thing to have, is that it gives me a reason to come back to my bullet journal every day and make sure I'm staying up to date on all my goals all the time, because I have to kind of flip through and look at all of these pages. Having something simple to fill in every day is just one way of building up that habit. Alright, so that's it. My bullet journal is all set up for October. If you've been following this channel for any amount of time, you'll know that these kind of warm, pinky, orangey colors are my favorite, and it just gets better as you get into fall, and you can tie these colors to warm, cozy feelings. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry it's a little late. I'm gonna keep doing my best to get a head start on these videos and not put them off to the last second, but I also do have quite a bit going on this month, as you can see. Don't forget to follow my Instagram if you want some updates, especially if you're interested in that Skillshare course. If all goes well, it will be out in October, though it might be out a little bit after October. Either way, follow on Instagram to get the latest information about that and about everything else I'm doing. Otherwise, just subscribe here and I'll be back next month with another video. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time. Bye.